The morning sun cast long shadows across the parking lot of Jefferson High School as cars began filling the empty spaces. It was the first day of the new semester, and the crisp January air carried the nervous energy of students returning from winter break. The brick building stood imposing against the pale blue sky, its windows reflecting the cold light of a winter morning in suburban Ohio. Inside the main office, a tall man in his mid-40s stood by the window, watching the students stream through the front entrance. Marcus Thompson had spent 20 years in education, working his way up from a substitute teacher in inner-city Chicago to assistant principal in Detroit, and now, finally, to principal of Jefferson High. His dark suit was pressed, his tie perfectly knotted, but there was a weariness in his eyes that spoke of battles fought and scars earned. He turned when he heard footsteps behind him. "Mr. Thompson, your daughter is here to see you before classes start," the secretary, Mrs. Patterson, announced with a warm smile. "Thank you, Patricia. Send her in." A moment later, a young woman of 17 walked through the door. Maya Thompson had inherited her father's height and her late mother's gentle features. Her curly hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she carried herself with a quiet confidence that belied the nervousness churning in her stomach. "Hey, Dad," she said, closing the door behind her. Marcus crossed the room and pulled her into a hug. "How are you feeling about your first day?" Maya shrugged, stepping back. "I've been the new kid before. I'll survive." "This is different, and we both know it." Marcus studied his daughter's face. "You didn't have to transfer here. You could have finished your senior year at Lincoln." "And have you commuting an hour each way?" "No, thanks." Maya managed a small smile. "Besides, I wanted to be here. New beginnings, right? That's what you always say." Marcus nodded, but concern lingered in his expression. "I've decided not to announce our relationship, at least not right away. I want you to have a chance to make friends without everyone knowing you're the principal's daughter." Maya's relief was visible. "Thank you, I was hoping you'd say that." "But Maya," Marcus continued, his voice growing serious, "if anyone gives you trouble, if anything happens, I need you to tell me. Promise me." "I promise, Dad." She glanced at the clock on the wall. "I should get to my first class. Don't want to be late on day one." Marcus walked her to the door. "What do you have first period?" "AP English Literature with—" Maya pulled out her schedule. "Mr. Richard Holloway." Something flickered across Marcus's face so briefly that Maya almost missed it. "Mr. Holloway, right. He's been teaching here for almost 30 years. "You know him?" "I've reviewed everyone's personnel file." Marcus's response was carefully neutral. "Have a good first day, sweetheart. I'll see you at home tonight." Maya kissed her father's cheek and headed out into the crowded hallway. The sounds of lockers slamming and conversations overlapping created a familiar symphony that followed her as she navigated toward room 247. The classroom was already half full when Maya arrived. Students clustered in groups, catching up after the break, their laughter punctuating the air. Maya found an empty seat near the middle of the room and settled in, pulling out a notebook and pen. The bell rang, and the chatter began to die down. That's when Richard Holloway made his entrance. He was a man who had clearly been handsome in his youth, but time and bitterness had carved harsh lines into his face. His silver hair was meticulously combed, his tweed jacket perfectly pressed, and he carried himself with the rigid posture of someone who believed the world owed him something it had failed to deliver. His eyes, behind wire-rimmed glasses, scanned the room with barely concealed disdain. "Welcome back to another semester of pretending you care about literature," he announced, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "For those of you who managed to forget everything over break, which I'm certain is most of you, we'll be beginning with a diagnostic essay. I want to see exactly how much remedial work we're facing." A collective groan rose from the students, but Holloway's sharp glare silenced it immediately. The prompt is on the board. You have 45 minutes. Anyone caught talking, looking at another student's paper, or breathing too loudly will receive an automatic 0. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Begin. Maya looked at the board. The prompt read, "Analyze the role of moral ambiguity in a literary work of your choice. Discuss how the author uses this ambiguity to challenge the reader's preconceptions." She felt a spark of excitement. This was exactly the kind of essay she loved writing. During her time at Lincoln, she had developed a passion for literary analysis, spending countless hours discussing books with her father, who had majored in English before switching to education administration. Maya began writing about The Great Gatsby, exploring the moral complexity of Jay Gatsby himself. Was he a romantic hero or a delusional criminal? Did his love for Daisy redeem his corruption, or did it merely expose the bankruptcy of the American dream? Her pen flew across the page as ideas flowed freely. 45 minutes later, Holloway's voice cut through the silence. "Pens down. Pass your essays forward." Maya added one final sentence and handed her paper to the student in front of her. She felt good about what she had written. It wasn't perfect, but it was thoughtful and well argued. For the remainder of the period, Holloway lectured about the semester's syllabus, his tone oscillating between condescension and outright contempt for his students. Maya noticed several students exchanging glances, their expressions a mixture of resentment and resignation. When the bell rang, students practically fled the room. Maya was gathering her things when a girl with bright red hair and a friendly smile approached her. "You're new, right? I'm Chloe Martinez." "Maya Thompson, nice to meet you." "Let me guess, first impression of Holloway?" Chloe raised an eyebrow. Maya hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "He seems intense." Chloe laughed, a warm sound that immediately put Maya at ease. "That's diplomatic. Most of us just call him a jerk, but not to his face, obviously. He's been terrorizing students since before my mum went here, and she graduated in the 90s. Has anyone ever complained about him?" "All the time. But he's tenured and he's been here forever, and the old principal basically let him do whatever he wanted." Chloe lowered her voice. "There's a rumor that the new principal might actually do something about him. But I'll believe it when I see it." Maya felt a complicated swirl of emotions, but kept her face neutral. "What's the new principal like?" "No idea. He just started today, too. I heard he's from Detroit, that he's strict but fair." Chloe shrugged. "We'll see. Hey, what's your next class?" The two girls compared schedules and discovered they shared 3 classes. By the time they parted ways for their second period, Maya felt a genuine friendship beginning to form. The rest of the day passed without incident. Maya navigated the social landscape of a new school with the practiced ease of someone who had done it before. She kept her head down, paid attention in class, and avoided drawing unnecessary attention to herself. That evening, she and her father ate dinner together in their modest rental house. Marcus had insisted on a simple home, nothing that would suggest he was trying to lord his position over anyone. The kitchen table was covered with takeout containers from a local Chinese restaurant, their compromise after a long day. "How was it?" Marcus asked, chopsticks poised over his lo mein. "Not bad. Made a friend named Chloe. She seems really nice." Maya hesitated. "Dad, what can you tell me about Richard Holloway?" Marcus set down his chopsticks. "Why do you ask?" "He's my English teacher. Maya searched for the right word. "There's something off about him, the way he talks to students, the way he looks at them, like he genuinely despises them." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Richard Holloway has been teaching at Jefferson for 28 years. He has tenure, which means he essentially has job security for life. His personnel file contains 17 formal complaints from students and parents over the past decade, none of which resulted in any disciplinary action under the previous administration." 17 complaints, and nothing happened? The previous principal, Dr. Morrison, believed in protecting his teachers, even when that protection wasn't warranted. Marcus's jaw tightened. I've been reviewing all the complaint files this week. Holloway's is concerning. What are you going to do? My job. Marcus picked up his chopsticks again. But I need to be careful, Maya. I can't go in guns blazing my first week. These situations require evidence, documentation, due process. If I move too fast, the teachers' union will have my head, and nothing will change. Maya nodded, understanding the complexity of the situation. Just promise me you won't ignore it forever. I promise. Marcus reached across the table and squeezed his daughter's hand. Now tell me more about this Chloe. Is she a good student? 3 weeks passed. Maya settled into the rhythm of Jefferson High, forming friendships with Chloe and a few other students who appreciated her intelligence and quiet humor. She excelled in most of her classes, earning praise from her teachers for her work ethic and thoughtful contributions. All except for Richard Holloway's class. The diagnostic essay came back with a C- and a single comment scrawled in red ink: superficial analysis, try harder. Maya stared at the grade in disbelief. She had written about the same topics, using similar arguments, and received A's from her English teacher at Lincoln. She approached Holloway after class that day. Mr. Holloway, I was hoping to discuss my essay. He looked up from his desk, his expression one of mild annoyance. What about it? I'm not sure I understand the grade. Could you explain what I could improve? Holloway leaned back in his chair. The grade speaks for itself, Miss Thompson, Maya Thompson. Miss Thompson, your essay was adequate, nothing more. If you want to earn a higher grade, I suggest you actually think before you write. Maya felt heat rising to her cheeks. I did think. I worked really hard on that essay. Then perhaps you're simply not as intelligent as you believe yourself to be. Holloway's smile was thin and cruel. That will be all. Maya stood frozen for a moment, shock and anger battling for dominance. Finally, she turned and walked out of the classroom, her hands trembling. That night, she told her father what had happened. Marcus listened carefully, his expression growing darker with each word. He said you weren't intelligent? He implied it. He was condescending and dismissive, and he didn't give me any real feedback. Maya's voice shook with frustration. I know I'm a good writer, Dad. That essay wasn't a C-. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Do you want me to intervene? No. Maya shook her head firmly. If you step in, everyone will know I'm your daughter, and they'll think I got special treatment. I need to handle this myself. You shouldn't have to handle being insulted by a teacher. I know, but I'm not ready to give up yet. Maybe if I work harder, show him what I can do. Marcus didn't look convinced, but he nodded. Okay, but Maya, if this continues, if he crosses a line, you need to tell me. Some battles aren't meant to be fought alone. Over the following weeks, Maya threw herself into Holloway's assignments with renewed determination. She spent hours in the library, researching and drafting and revising. She met with the school's writing tutor to get additional feedback. She produced work that she knew objectively was excellent. The grades didn't improve. Her essays came back with B-, C+, always with vague criticisms that offered no constructive guidance. Lacks depth. Unconvincing argument. Shows promise but fails to deliver. Meanwhile, Maya watched as other students, particularly those who laughed at Holloway's jokes and deferred to his every opinion, received higher grades for work that was demonstrably weaker than hers. She noticed patterns. The students who challenged him, who asked questions, who displayed any hint of independent thought, were consistently penalized. One afternoon, Chloe found Maya sitting alone in the cafeteria, staring at another marked-up essay. B- again? Chloe slid into the seat across from her. C. Maya's voice was flat. He wrote that my analysis of Beloved was emotionally manipulative and intellectually lazy. Chloe grabbed the essay and scanned it. This is really good, Maya. Like really good. I read what Jake submitted for the same assignment, and it was basically a plot summary. He got an A-. Jake always agrees with whatever Holloway says. Exactly. Chloe handed back the essay. Look, everyone knows Holloway plays favorites. He's been doing it for years. The only way to survive his class is to kiss up to him or become invisible. I can't do either of those things. Then you need to accept that you're going to have a bad grade, no matter what you deserve. Chloe's expression was sympathetic but resigned. That's just how it works. Maya looked down at her essay, at the red ink slashing across her carefully crafted sentences. Something hardened inside her. No, that's not how it should work. But before Maya could figure out her next move, everything escalated. It happened on a cold February morning, 3 days before the anniversary of her mother's death. Maya was already fragile, her grief simmering just below the surface, as it did every year around this time. She had tried to focus on school, to keep herself distracted, but the weight of loss was heavy on her shoulders. The assignment had been to write a personal essay, analyzing how a literary work had influenced the writer's life. Maya had chosen When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi, a memoir about a neurosurgeon diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. The book had been given to her by her father after her mother's passing, and it had helped her process her grief in ways she hadn't known were possible. She had poured her heart into the essay, writing about how Kalanithi's meditation on mortality and meaning had shaped her understanding of loss. She wrote about her mother, about watching her fight cancer with dignity and grace, about the silence that filled their house after she was gone. It was the most personal piece of writing Maya had ever submitted to a teacher. Holloway collected the essays at the beginning of class, glancing at each one with disinterest. When he reached Maya's desk, he paused. "Thompson, what did you write about?" "When Breath Becomes Air." Holloway's eyebrow arched. "Interesting choice. Most students your age prefer something more accessible." Maya wasn't sure if he was complimenting or insulting her, so she said nothing. The class period proceeded as usual, with Holloway droning on about the upcoming unit on modernist poetry. Maya tried to focus, but her mind kept drifting to her mother, to the hospital room, to the last words they had exchanged. When the bell rang, Holloway called out, "Miss Thompson, stay after class." Chloe shot Maya a worried look, but Maya just shrugged and gathered her things. She waited as the other students filed out, leaving her alone with Holloway. He was sitting at his desk, her essay in his hands. As she approached, she noticed that his expression was different than usual. There was a glint in his eye that made her uneasy. "Close the door!" Maya hesitated, then did as he asked. Holloway held up her essay, making a show of examining it. "This is what you submitted for the assignment." "Yes, sir." "You expect me to believe that you wrote this?" Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "I did write it, every word." Holloway stood slowly, deliberately. He walked around his desk until he was standing directly in front of her, close enough that she had to look up to meet his eyes. "This essay," he said, his voice low and dangerous, "is riddled with problems. The structure is weak, the analysis is shallow. And frankly, Miss Thompson, I don't believe for a second that you're capable of producing work of this nature." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that either you plagiarized this from somewhere, or you had someone else write it for you." Holloway's lip curled. "Did Daddy help you with your homework?" Maya felt as if she had been slapped. "My father had nothing to do with this. I wrote it myself, about my mother." "Your mother?" Holloway's tone dripped with contempt. "How convenient. A dead parent to generate sympathy points. Very clever." Something inside Maya snapped. "Don't you dare talk about my mother like that." The room went very still. Holloway's eyes widened slightly, then narrowed when he spoke again. His voice was ice. "How dare you speak to me that way?" He took a step closer. "You think you're special. You think your little sob story entitles you to special treatment? You're nothing, a mediocre student with an inflated sense of self-importance. He grabbed the essay and held it up. This is what I think of your pathetic attempt at manipulation. And then, deliberately looking directly into Maya's eyes, he tore the essay in half, and then in half again, and again, until the pieces fluttered to the floor like broken wings. "You're stupid," he said, each word precise and venomous, "and you will never amount to anything. Now get out of my classroom." Maya stood frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. The world had narrowed to this moment, to the torn pieces of paper at her feet, to the cruel satisfaction in Holloway's eyes. Somehow she made her legs work. Somehow she walked to the door, picked up her bag, and stepped into the hallway. She made it around the corner before the tears came, hot and uncontrollable, blurring her vision as she stumbled toward the nearest bathroom. She didn't make it. She collapsed against a row of lockers, sliding down until she was sitting on the cold tile floor, her body shaking with sobs. The pieces of her essay, the ones she had managed to grab, were clutched in her hands, the ink already smearing with her tears. That's how Chloe found her 10 minutes later. "Maya! Oh my God, what happened?" Chloe dropped to her knees beside her friend. "Are you hurt? What's wrong?" Maya couldn't speak. She just held out the torn pieces of paper. Chloe took them, her expression shifting from confusion to horror as she recognized what they were. He did this. Holloway. A nod. "What else? Maya, what else happened?" And slowly, haltingly, Maya told her everything. The accusations, the insults, the cruelty of his words about her mother. When she finished, Chloe's face was white with fury. "We have to tell someone. This is abuse, Maya. This isn't okay. Who would believe me? It's my word against his, and he's been here for 30 years. Someone has to believe you." Chloe helped Maya to her feet. "Come on, we're going to the principal's office right now." Maya's heart stopped. "Chloe, I can't." "Yes, you can. This new principal is supposed to be different, remember? Maybe he'll actually do something." "You don't understand. A principal, he's my father." Chloe stared at her. "What?" "Marcus Thompson, the new principal. He's my dad. We kept it quiet because I didn't want special treatment, but—" Maya wiped her eyes. "If I go to him, everyone will know, and Holloway will say I made it up to get him fired." "Maya, listen to me." Chloe grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to make eye contact. "What he did to you was wrong. It doesn't matter who your father is. You deserve to be believed. And if Holloway has been doing this to students for 30 years, then someone needs to stop him." Maya looked at the torn pieces of her essay, at the words she had written about her mother, now destroyed by a man who didn't care about anything but his own ego. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, let's go." The walk to the main office felt like a death march. Maya's heart pounded with every step, her mind racing through all the possible outcomes. Would anyone believe her? Would Holloway face consequences, or would she be dismissed as a troublemaker? And what would happen when everyone learned the truth about who she was? Mrs. Patterson looked up as they entered. "Can I help you girls?" "We need to see the principal," Chloe said firmly. "It's urgent." Something in their expressions must have conveyed the seriousness of the situation, because Mrs. Patterson didn't argue. "Just a moment." She picked up her phone and spoke quietly into it, then nodded. "He'll see you now." Marcus looked up as the door opened. His welcoming expression immediately shifted to concern when he saw his daughter's tear-stained face. "Maya, what happened?" Maya opened her mouth, but no words came out. Instead, she held out the torn pieces of her essay. Marcus took them, his hands trembling slightly as he pieced together what he was looking at. He saw the title, the first few lines about when breath becomes air, about loss and grief and healing. He saw where the paper had been violently ripped apart. When he looked up, his eyes were blazing. "Who did this?" "Mr. Holloway." Maya's voice was barely a whisper. He accused me of plagiarizing. He said I was using Mom's death for sympathy points. And then he tore up my essay and called me stupid. He said I would never amount to anything. The room was absolutely silent. Marcus's face had gone very still, very controlled, in a way that Maya recognized as barely contained fury. "Chloe," Marcus said quietly, "would you mind stepping outside for a moment? I need to speak with my daughter." Chloe squeezed Maya's hand and slipped out, closing the door behind her. Marcus came around his desk and pulled Maya into a fierce hug. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry." Maya broke down again, sobbing into her father's chest, like she hadn't done since she was a child. All the grief, all the anger, all the frustration of the past weeks came pouring out in a flood of tears. When she finally pulled back, Marcus's eyes were wet too. He guided her to a chair and handed her a box of tissues. "Tell me everything, from the beginning." Maya told him about the C- on her diagnostic essay, the condescending comments, the weeks of unfair grades while students who agreed with Holloway flourished, the patterns she had noticed, the favoritism, the punishment of independent thought. And finally, today, the accusation, the torn essay, the words that had cut deeper than any grade. When she finished, Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot below. "I should have acted sooner," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "I saw the complaints in his file. I knew something was wrong. But I told myself I needed to be careful, to build a case, to follow procedure." He turned back to face her. "I let procedure become an excuse for inaction, and you paid the price." "Dad, it's not your fault." "It is. I'm the principal. This school is my responsibility, and I failed you." Marcus's jaw tightened. "But that ends now." He walked to his desk and picked up the phone. "Patricia, I need you to pull Richard Holloway's complete personnel file. Every complaint, every evaluation, every incident report, and I need you to clear my schedule for the rest of the day." He paused, listening. "Yes, it's urgent. Thank you." After he hung up, he looked at Maya. "I'm going to need you to write a formal statement about what happened. Every detail you can remember, names, dates, specific quotes. Can you do that?" Maya nodded, a glimmer of hope breaking through her despair. "Does this mean you're going to do something?" "I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure Richard Holloway never treats another student the way he treated you." Marcus's expression was resolute. "But I need to be smart about it. If I move too fast, without proper documentation, the union will protect him and he'll be back in that classroom within a month, so we're going to do this right." "What about everyone finding out that you're my father?" Marcus considered this. "That's going to come out eventually, but I want you to know that my actions aren't about favoritism or protecting my daughter. They're about protecting all the students who've been harmed by that man and all the students who might be harmed in the future." He reached out and took her hand. "You just happen to be the one brave enough to finally speak up." Maya spent the next hour in her father's office, writing out her statement. Every humiliating comment, every unfair grade, every moment of cruelty that she could remember. It was painful, reliving those experiences, but there was also something cathartic about putting it all on paper. When she finished, Chloe was waiting for her in the main office. "Well, he's going to investigate properly." Maya managed a small smile. "He's going to try to stop him." "Good." Chloe linked her arm through Maya's. "And for what it's worth, I don't care if your dad is the principal. You're still my friend." "Thanks, Chloe." That night, Marcus came home late. Maya was sitting at the kitchen table, unable to sleep, when he walked through the door. He looked exhausted, the kind of bone-deep weariness that came from carrying impossible burdens. "How did it go?" she asked. Marcus sat down across from her. "I went through every complaint in Holloway's file, 17 formal complaints, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. There are notes from parent meetings, concerns raised in staff evaluations, patterns that anyone paying attention should have seen years ago. So what happens now? Tomorrow morning, I'm going to have a conversation with Mr. Holloway. I'm going to give him the opportunity to explain himself. Marcus's expression hardened. And then I'm going to take whatever action is necessary. What if he denies it? It's still my word against his. Marcus reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. Not anymore. After you left today, I asked Patricia to put out a confidential request for any student who had experienced similar treatment from Mr. Holloway to come forward. Within 2 hours, I had 11 statements. Maya stared at the folder. 11? 11 students who were willing to put their names on paper. I suspect there are many more who are afraid to speak up. Marcus's voice was thick with emotion. You weren't alone, Maya. You were just the first one brave enough to break the silence. The next morning, Maya woke to a text from her father. Stay strong, I've got this. She went to school as usual, her nerves frayed, but her resolve steady. Chloe met her at the entrance, and together they walked toward their first class. The hallway was buzzing with whispers. News traveled fast in a high school, and apparently something had happened that morning that had everyone talking. Did you hear? A junior named Tyler asked as they passed. Holloway got called into the principal's office first thing. He's been in there for like an hour. Maya's heart raced, but she kept her expression neutral. No, I didn't hear that. Dude, something's going down. I've never seen a teacher get called in like that. Chloe shot Maya a look, and Maya gave a tiny nod. It was happening. First period came and went with a substitute teacher covering Holloway's class. The substitute, a nervous young man who clearly hadn't expected to be there, fumbled through a generic lesson plan while students whispered and speculated. At lunchtime, Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her father. Come to my office. Bring your friend if you want. Maya and Chloe made their way to the main office, ignoring the curious stares that followed them. Mrs. Patterson waved them through immediately. Marcus was standing by the window again, his face unreadable, but there was something different about his posture, a weight that seemed to have lifted from his shoulders. It's done, he said. Maya's breath caught. What do you mean? I confronted Holloway with the evidence. The complaints, the statements, the patterns of abuse. I gave him the opportunity to explain himself, to show any remorse, to demonstrate any understanding of the harm he'd caused. And? Marcus's expression darkened. He laughed at me. He said that students today are too sensitive, that he was just preparing them for the real world, that a little tough love never hurt anyone. His hands clenched at his sides. When I told him that calling a student stupid and tearing up her essay about her deceased mother was not tough love, he said, and I quote, if she can't handle criticism, maybe she shouldn't be in an advanced class. Maya felt sick. So he doesn't even care. No, he doesn't. Marcus took a deep breath, which made my next step much easier. I've placed him on immediate administrative leave pending a formal investigation by the school board. Given the volume of evidence, I expect that investigation to result in termination. He's fired? Not yet. Due process requires a full review, but he will not set foot in a classroom at Jefferson High again. Marcus finally allowed himself a small smile. It's over, Maya. Maya burst into tears for the third time in 24 hours, but these were tears of relief. Chloe hugged her tight, and even Mrs. Patterson, who had been hovering near the door, dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. But Marcus held up a hand. There's more. Maya, I want you to be prepared for what comes next. What do you mean? Word is going to spread. When students and parents find out what happened, when they learn that the new principal took action against a tenured teacher on his first month on the job, there's going to be attention, media attention possibly, and people are going to find out that you're my daughter. Maya's stomach tightened, and they're going to say I got him fired because of favoritism. Some might, but the evidence speaks for itself. 11 other students came forward, Maya. This wasn't about one complaint from the principal's daughter. This was about decades of abuse finally being brought to light. Marcus walked over and put his hands on her shoulders. You were the catalyst, but you weren't the only one, and anyone who looks at the full picture will see that. What if they don't? Then we deal with it together, because we've never run from hard things, have we? Maya thought about her mother, about the courage she had shown in her final months, about the strength it had taken to start over in a new city, a new school, a new life. No, we haven't. The following week was chaos. As Marcus had predicted, the news spread like wildfire. A veteran teacher placed on leave by a new principal was a story too juicy to contain. Local media picked it up, framing it as either a long-overdue reckoning or a witch hunt, depending on the outlet. And inevitably, Maya's identity came out. It started with whispers in the hallway. "Did you hear the new girl is actually the principal's daughter? She's the one who got Holloway fired. I heard she made the whole thing up for attention." Maya did her best to ignore it, but the stares and the comments wore on her. Some students were supportive, coming up to thank her for having the courage to speak out. Others were hostile, particularly those who had been Holloway's favorites and resented their comfortable dynamic being disrupted. The worst came from a senior named Derek Walsh, who had been one of Holloway's star pupils. He cornered Maya in the hallway after school one day, his face contorted with anger. "You think you're some kind of hero?" he snarled. "Holloway was the best teacher in this school. He actually challenged us, actually expected us to be better. And you got him thrown out because your feelings were hurt." Maya stood her ground, even though her heart was pounding. "He called me stupid. He tore up my essay about my dead mother. He did the same thing to dozens of other students over 30 years. That's not challenging people. That's abuse. You're a liar and a daddy's girl. Everyone knows you only went to the principal because he's your father. This whole thing is a scam." Before Maya could respond, another voice cut through the tension. "Back off, Derek." Maya turned to see a group of students approaching. At the front was a girl she didn't recognize, tall with dark hair and a fierce expression. "Who are you?" Derek demanded. "Rachel Okonkwo, class of 2018. The girl stepped forward until she was face to face with Derek. "Holloway made my life a living hell for 2 years. He called me worthless. He told me I was only in AP classes because of affirmative action. He destroyed my love of reading, something I've spent years trying to rebuild." Another student stepped forward. "Kyle Chen, class of 2020. He accused me of cheating on every assignment because he couldn't believe an Asian kid might actually have original thoughts." And another, Jessica Palmer, current senior. "He told me I was too ugly to play a romantic lead in the school play, even though his class had nothing to do with drama." One by one, former and current students spoke up, each sharing their own experience with Holloway's cruelty. Maya watched in amazement as the crowd grew, as voices that had been silent for years finally found the courage to speak. Derek's face had gone pale. He looked around at the gathering crowd, at the expressions of anger and pain and solidarity, and something in him seemed to break. Without another word, he turned and walked away. Rachel turned to Maya, her expression softening. "Thank you for being the one who finally stopped him." "I didn't do it alone." Maya's voice was thick with emotion. 11 students came forward, and apparently there were a lot more. There are. Rachel looked around at the assembled group. "We were all too scared to speak up while he was in power, but now that someone finally had the courage to start, we can all be heard." That evening, Marcus came home to find Maya sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by notes and messages. Letters of support had started arriving, from current students, from alumni, from parents who had witnessed their children suffer under Holloway's cruelty. "I didn't realize," Maya said quietly, "how many people he hurt, how much pain he caused." Marcus sat down across from her. "Neither did I, fully, not until the investigation started." He picked up one of the letters, from a woman whose daughter had graduated 10 years ago. This woman writes that her daughter attempted suicide after Holloway spent an entire semester publicly humiliating her in class. She survived, but she never went to college. She still has panic attacks when she thinks about that classroom. Maya felt sick, and no one stopped him? No one could, or so they believed. That's the thing about power, Maya. When someone has it for long enough, it becomes invisible. People stop questioning it. They start to believe that's just the way things are. Marcus set down the letter. You changed that. You saw something was wrong, and you refused to accept it as normal. That's not something everyone can do. I almost didn't, Maya admitted. If Chloe hadn't pushed me, I might have just kept my head down and survived. But you didn't. And now, because of you, dozens of people are finally being heard. That matters, Maya, more than you know. 2 weeks later, the school board completed its investigation. Based on the overwhelming evidence of sustained misconduct, Richard Holloway was terminated from his position at Jefferson High. His teaching license was placed under review, and it was recommended that he not be permitted to teach in any public school in the state. The announcement was made at a school assembly. Marcus stood at the podium, his voice steady and clear. For too long, Jefferson High School failed to protect its students from abuse. We allowed one teacher's cruelty to go unchecked because we valued tradition over safety, because we feared conflict more than we loved justice. That ends today. He paused, looking out at the sea of young faces. I want to thank the students who came forward during this investigation. It takes tremendous courage to speak up when you've been taught that your voice doesn't matter. Each of you has shown that it does. Going forward, this school will be different. We will listen to students. We will take complaints seriously. We will hold every adult in this building to the same standard of decency and respect that we expect from our students, because you deserve nothing less. The applause that followed was thunderous. Maya, sitting in the crowd next to Chloe, felt tears streaming down her face. Not tears of pain this time, but tears of hope. After the assembly, students swarmed the hallway, the atmosphere electric with a new energy. For the first time in years, Jefferson High felt like a place where students were valued, where their voices mattered, where change was possible. Chloe grabbed Maya's arm. Look! Maya turned to see a group of students approaching. At the front was Derek Walsh, the same boy who had confronted her in the hallway weeks ago. His expression was very different now. Humble and uncertain. Maya, I wanted to apologize. Derek's voice was rough. What I said to you was wrong. I was angry and I took it out on you, and I'm sorry. Maya studied him for a long moment. Why were you angry? Derek hesitated. He was nice to me. He told me I was special, that I was going somewhere. It felt good to be his favorite. His eyes dropped. But I've been reading the statements from other students. The things he said to them, the way he treated them, that wasn't the teacher I thought I knew. Maybe he was only nice to people who made him feel powerful. Yeah, Derek swallowed hard. I think you're right. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. Maya considered his apology. There was a part of her that wanted to stay angry, to hold on to the hurt of his words. But she thought about what her mother had always said. Carrying anger was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I forgive you, she said finally. But Derek, being someone's favorite doesn't make you special. Being kind to people who can't do anything for you, that's what makes you special. Derek nodded slowly. I'll try to remember that. As he walked away, Chloe let out a low whistle. That was very mature of you. My mom used to say that. Maya smiled sadly. She was smart about people. She sounds amazing. She was. The months that followed brought profound changes to Jefferson High. Marcus implemented a new reporting system for student complaints, one that ensured every concern was documented and addressed. He established regular town halls where students could speak directly to administrators about their experiences. He brought in counselors to support students who had been affected by Holloway's years of abuse. Maya, for her part, found her voice in unexpected ways. She started a peer support group for students who had experienced teacher misconduct, a safe space where they could share their stories and begin to heal. She wrote an op-ed for the school newspaper about the importance of speaking up, which was picked up by several local publications. And she discovered, somewhat to her surprise, that she wanted to become a teacher herself. One evening in late spring, she shared this realization with her father over dinner. "I know it sounds crazy after everything that happened, but seeing how one bad teacher can destroy a student's confidence, it made me think about how much good a great teacher can do." Marcus smiled, the first genuine, unguarded smile she had seen from him in months. "That doesn't sound crazy at all. It sounds like exactly who you are." Mrs. Okonkwo, one of the teachers who spoke up, she offered to mentor me, help me figure out what I need to do to pursue education as a career. "That's wonderful, Maya, truly." "There's something else." Maya hesitated. "I've been thinking about Mom a lot, about what she would say about all of this." Marcus's expression softened. "What do you think she would say?" "I think she would be proud. Not because I got a bad teacher fired, but because I didn't let fear stop me from doing what was right." Maya's voice caught. She always used to say that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was being afraid and doing it anyway. "She was the bravest person I ever knew." Marcus's eyes glistened. "And you are just like her." Graduation came in June, under a cloudless blue sky. Maya walked across the stage to receive her diploma, and the applause that followed was louder than she had expected. Not just from Chloe and her other friends, but from students and teachers and parents throughout the auditorium. As she looked out at the crowd, she saw her father standing in the back, camera in hand, tears streaming freely down his face. She saw Mrs. Okonkwo and the other teachers who had supported her. She saw Rachel and Kyle and Jessica, the former students who had come back to watch her graduate. She saw a community that had been broken and was slowly, painfully, learning how to heal. After the ceremony, Marcus found her in the crowd. "I have something for you." He pressed an envelope into her hand. Maya opened it to find a letter, handwritten on yellowed paper, her mother's handwriting. "I found it when I was packing up the house in Detroit," Marcus explained. "She wrote it for you years ago, to be given to you on your graduation day. I saved it." Maya's hands trembled as she unfolded the letter. "My dearest Maya, if you're reading this, it means I'm not there to celebrate this day with you. I'm so sorry I couldn't stay. Please know that leaving you was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. But I also know that you are strong enough to survive without me. You are strong enough to survive anything. You have a light inside you, Maya, a fire that no darkness can extinguish. Never let anyone make you believe otherwise. There will be people in your life who try to diminish you, who tell you that you're not good enough, who try to break your spirit. Don't let them. Your worth is not determined by their opinions. Your value is not measured by their approval. Stand tall, speak true, love fiercely, and remember always that I am with you in every sunrise, in every act of courage, in every moment when you choose kindness over cruelty, hope over despair. I'm so proud of the woman you are becoming. I always will be. All my love, forever, Mom." Maya read the letter 3 times, tears blurring the words until she had them memorized. When she finally looked up, Marcus was waiting. "She knew," Maya whispered. "She knew what I would face. She knew who you were." Marcus pulled her into a hug. "And she knew you would never let anyone destroy that." They stood there for a long moment, father and daughter, united in grief and love and hope. Around them, graduates celebrated, and families rejoiced, and the future stretched out, uncertain and beautiful. Finally, Maya stepped back and wiped her eyes. "So what happens now?" Marcus smiled. "Whatever you want, the world is waiting." Maya looked out at the crowd, at the blue sky above, at the possibilities that lay ahead. She thought about her mother's letter, about the fire that no darkness could extinguish, and she smiled. The summer before college was a time of transition and growth. Maya enrolled in a summer program at Ohio State University, where she would be attending in the fall. She took an introductory course in educational psychology, eager to begin her journey toward becoming a teacher. The program was challenging, but Maya found herself thriving in ways she hadn't expected. She was older now, more confident, more certain of who she was and what she wanted. The experience with Holloway had been painful, but it had also forged something new in her, a resilience that she hadn't known she possessed. Her professor, Dr. Linda Washington, was everything Holloway was not. She was demanding but fair, challenging her students to think critically while always treating them with respect. She took the time to learn each student's name, to understand their backgrounds, to tailor her teaching to their needs. One afternoon, Dr. Washington asked Maya to stay after class. "I've been reading your essays," she said, her voice warm. "You have real insight into the psychology of learning. Have you considered pursuing educational research?" Maya blinked. "I hadn't really thought about it. I just want to teach." "Teaching is wonderful, but there are many ways to impact education, research, policy, curriculum development. The field needs people who understand both the theory and the practice." Dr. Washington leaned forward. "I'm starting a research project this fall, looking at how teacher behavior affects student motivation and mental health. I could use an undergraduate research assistant. Would you be interested?" Maya's heart raced. "I would be honored." "Good." Dr. Washington smiled. "I'll send you the details, but Maya, I want to say something else. I've heard about what happened at your high school, the teacher, the investigation. I know it was difficult for you." Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "What you did took tremendous courage. It also showed a deep understanding of educational ethics, of what teaching should and shouldn't be." Dr. Washington's expression was serious. "That understanding is rare, and it's valuable. Never forget that." Maya thought about those words often in the weeks that followed. She thought about them when she was studying late at night, when she was overwhelmed by the demands of college life, when she doubted her ability to make a difference. Dr. Washington had seen something in her, something worth nurturing. Maya was determined not to let her down. She kept in touch with Chloe, who was attending a community college nearby while working part-time at her family's restaurant. They met for coffee when they could, sharing stories about their new lives, their challenges and triumphs. "Do you ever think about Holloway?" Chloe asked one afternoon. Maya considered the question. "Sometimes, not as much as I used to. He's like a scar now, you know. It's always there, but it doesn't hurt the way it used to." "I heard he moved to Florida, got a job at some private school that didn't bother to check his references." Maya's stomach turned. "You're kidding." "Nope. My mom's friend works in education administration. She said these guys always find a way to land on their feet." Chloe shook her head. "It's messed up." Maya was quiet for a long moment. "Then I have to do more. It can't just be about one school, one teacher. It has to be about changing the system." Chloe raised an eyebrow. "And how are you going to do that?" "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out." That determination carried Maya through her first year of college, and then her second, and then her third. She excelled in her classes, contributed to Dr. Washington's research, and began developing a thesis on the lasting effects of teacher misconduct on student development. She also became an advocate, working with local school boards to improve their reporting and accountability systems. She testified at state legislative hearings about the need for stronger protections for students. She started a blog that shared stories from survivors of teacher abuse, giving voice to those who had been silenced. And she never forgot where she came from. In her junior year, Marcus called with unexpected news. "I'm leaving Jefferson High." Maya nearly dropped her phone. "What? Why?" The State Department of Education offered me a position, Director of Student Safety and Wellness. I'd be overseeing policy development for the entire state. Dad, that's amazing. It's a chance to do what we did at Jefferson on a much larger scale. To make sure that what happened to you, what happened to all those students, is harder to happen anywhere else. Marcus paused. I couldn't have done it without you, Maya. You started this. We started it together. Marcus laughed, a warm sound that made Maya's heart ache with love. I suppose we did. That summer, Maya returned to Ohio to help her father transition to his new role. She spent long hours in his office, reviewing policy documents, meeting with administrators, sharing her perspective as someone who had experienced the system from the inside. One afternoon, she was reviewing a stack of complaint files when a name caught her eye: Richard Holloway. Her blood ran cold. Dad! Marcus looked up from his desk. What is it? Maya held up the file. Holloway. There's a complaint against him from a school in Florida. Marcus took the file and read it, his expression growing darker with each line. Same pattern: verbal abuse, intimidation, retaliation against students who speak up. He hasn't changed. No, he hasn't. Marcus set down the file, but this time it's going to be different. Working together, Marcus and Maya coordinated with Florida education officials to share the documentation from Holloway's time at Jefferson High. They connected the Florida students with legal resources and advocacy organizations. They built a case that was impossible to ignore. 3 months later, Richard Holloway's teaching license was permanently revoked. He would never stand in front of a classroom again. When Maya heard the news, she was sitting in her dorm room, surrounded by textbooks and notes. She thought about the girl she had been, sitting on that cold tile floor with the torn pieces of her essay in her hands. She thought about how alone she had felt, how helpless, how certain that no one would ever believe her. And she thought about how much had changed. She picked up her phone and called her father. We did it. You did it, Maya. From the very beginning, this was your fight. No. Maya's voice was firm. It was never just my fight. It was everyone's. Every student who was ever made to feel worthless by someone who was supposed to teach them. We did this together. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Your mother would be so proud of you. I know. Maya smiled through her tears. I feel her with me every day. Maya graduated with honors, her thesis on teacher accountability winning recognition from the National Education Association. She was offered positions at prestigious universities, research fellowships, consulting roles with major education nonprofits. But she chose to return to Ohio, to the community that had shaped her. She took a job teaching English at a high school not far from Jefferson, a school in a lower-income neighborhood where students faced challenges she could only imagine. She brought everything she had learned, everything she had survived, into her classroom. On her first day, she stood in front of 35 students, their expressions ranging from curious to skeptical to bored. She remembered how it had felt to be on the other side of that dynamic, how much power a teacher had to shape a student's sense of self. My name is Maya Thompson, she said, her voice clear and steady, and I'm going to be honest with you. I know that some of you have had bad experiences with teachers who didn't believe in you, who put you down, who made you feel like you didn't belong here. The room had gone very quiet. I had a teacher like that once. He told me I was stupid. He tore up my work in front of me. He made me feel worthless. Maya paused. But I'm standing here today because I refuse to let him define me. And I'm here to tell you that no teacher, no adult, no person on this planet has the right to make you feel less than you are. She looked out at the young faces before her, seeing the flickers of recognition, of hope, of something that might have been trust. This classroom is going to be different. Here your voice matters, your story matters, you matter. Maya smiled. Now let's get to work. The years that followed were not always easy. Teaching was hard work, harder than Maya had imagined. There were students who challenged her, systems that frustrated her, moments when she wondered if she was making any difference at all. But there were also breakthroughs. The student who had never finished a book suddenly staying after class to discuss the ending of To Kill a Mockingbird. The girl who had been told she wasn't college material getting accepted to her dream school. The boy who had been on the verge of dropping out finding his voice through poetry. Maya collected these moments like treasures, holding them close when the work felt impossible. She also continued her advocacy work, partnering with organizations across the country to push for stronger student protections. She spoke at conferences, wrote articles, testified before legislatures. She became known as a voice for those who had been silenced, a champion for those who had been forgotten. And through it all, she carried her mother's letter with her. It was worn now, creased and faded, but the words were still clear. Stand tall, speak true, love fiercely. On the 10th anniversary of her mother's death, Maya returned to the cemetery where she was buried. It was a crisp autumn day, the trees ablaze with color, the sky a perfect, heartbreaking blue. Marcus was already there when she arrived. They stood together in front of the simple headstone, their silence full of memories. "I brought you something," Maya said finally. She pulled out a photograph, a snapshot taken at her classroom door. Her students gathered around her with signs that read, "Best teacher ever," and "Thank you, Ms. Thompson." She placed the photograph against the headstone. "I wanted you to see." The wind stirred the leaves, and for just a moment, Maya could have sworn she felt her mother's presence. Not a ghost, nothing supernatural, just a feeling of warmth and love and pride. "I did what you asked," Maya whispered. "I stood tall, I spoke true, I loved fiercely, and I think I finally understand what you meant." Marcus put his arm around her shoulders. "She knows, Maya, wherever she is. She knows." They stood there until the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Then, together, they walked back to the car, leaving the photograph behind as a testament to a life well lived and a legacy that would never be forgotten. That evening, Maya received a phone call. It was Dr. Washington, her mentor from college. "Maya, I have news. The Department of Education is creating a new position, a national coordinator for student safety and wellness. They want someone who understands the issue from every angle: research, policy, practice, and lived experience." Dr. Washington paused. "They asked me to recommend someone, and I thought of you." Maya's breath caught. "Me? You've been preparing for this your whole career, whether you knew it or not. This is a chance to take everything you've done and scale it nationally, to make sure that what happened to you never happens to another student, anywhere in this country." Maya thought about her classroom, her students, the work she had built. She thought about all the battles yet to be fought, all the voices yet to be heard. "I'll think about it," she said. "Thank you, Dr. Washington, for everything." That night she called her father. "I don't know what to do." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Tell me what you're feeling." "Scared, excited, overwhelmed." Maya laughed shakily. "I love teaching. I love my students, but this opportunity, it's everything I've been working toward."
"It is."
"What would Mom say?" Marcus didn't hesitate. "She would say to follow your heart. She would say that you already know the answer. You just need to trust yourself to hear it." Maya lay awake for hours that night, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with the decision. She thought about her mother, about her father, about Chloe and Dr. Washington, and all the students she had taught. She thought about Holloway, about the harm he had caused, about how close she had come to being destroyed by his cruelty. And she thought about all the students out there right now, sitting in classrooms with teachers who didn't deserve them. Students who felt alone, who felt worthless, who didn't know that things could be different. By morning, she knew what she had to do. 6 months later, Maya Thompson stood at a podium in Washington, D.C., facing a room full of journalists, policymakers, and educators. Behind her, a banner read, "National Student Safety Initiative." "Every child deserves to feel safe in school," she said, her voice carrying through the hall. "Every child deserves teachers who believe in them, who nurture them, who help them become the best versions of themselves. For too long, we have failed to hold abusive educators accountable. For too long, we have allowed vulnerable students to suffer in silence. Today, we begin the work of changing that." In the audience, Marcus watched with tears in his eyes. Beside him sat Chloe, who had flown in for the occasion, and Dr. Washington, beaming with pride. "I know this work will not be easy," Maya continued. "There will be resistance from those who benefit from the status quo, from those who fear accountability, from those who believe that some students are simply not worth protecting. To them, I say this: you are wrong. Every student is worth protecting. Every voice is worth hearing. Every child matters." She paused, gathering herself for the final words. "I stand here today because someone believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, because someone loved me enough to fight for me, because someone showed me that my voice was powerful even when the world tried to silence it." Maya's voice broke slightly. "I stand here for my mother, who taught me that courage is not the absence of fear. I stand here for my father, who showed me that one person can change a system. And I stand here for every student who has ever been made to feel less than they are." She looked out at the crowd, at the cameras, at the faces waiting for her next words. "We can do better. We must do better, and starting today, we will." The applause that followed was deafening. Maya stepped back from the podium, her heart pounding, her eyes wet with tears. She had come so far from that girl on the cold tile floor, surrounded by the pieces of a torn essay. But she hadn't forgotten her. She never would. Because that girl, broken and afraid and determined to survive, she was the foundation of everything Maya had become. And she would honor her, always, by fighting for those who couldn't fight for themselves. As she left the stage, Marcus met her in the wings. He pulled her into a fierce hug. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered. "I couldn't have done it without you, Dad." "Yes, you could have." Marcus pulled back, his eyes shining. "But I'm glad I got to be part of it." Chloe appeared beside them, grabbing Maya in a hug of her own. "That was incredible. You're incredible." Maya laughed, the joy bubbling up from somewhere deep inside her. "I still can't believe this is my life." "Believe it," Dr. Washington said, joining the group. "And get ready, because the real work starts now." Maya looked at the people surrounding her, the people who had believed in her, supported her, loved her through the hardest moments of her life. She thought about all the students she had yet to meet, all the lives she had yet to touch, all the battles she had yet to win. And she smiled. "I'm ready," she said. "Let's get to work." The years ahead would bring challenges Maya couldn't yet imagine. There would be setbacks and disappointments, moments when progress seemed impossible. There would be powerful enemies who fought to maintain the status quo, who dismissed her work as naive idealism, who tried to silence her voice. But there would also be victories. Laws passed, policies changed, students protected. There would be letters from parents thanking her for saving their children. There would be former students going on to become teachers themselves, carrying forward the torch she had lit. And through it all, Maya would remember who she was and where she had come from. She would remember the girl with the torn essay, the girl who had been called stupid, the girl who had been told she would never amount to anything. She had proven them wrong, not through revenge, not through bitterness, but through resilience, courage, and an unshakable belief in the power of one person to make a difference. On the wall of her office in Washington, Maya hung 3 things: her mother's letter, framed and preserved, the photograph from her first teaching job, and a single piece of paper, carefully reconstructed from the fragments she had saved all those years ago. The essay about when breath becomes air. The essay that had almost broken her, but instead had set her free. Visitors would sometimes ask about that paper, its creases and tears, visible even through the frame. Maya would tell them the story, not to garner sympathy, but to illustrate a truth she had learned the hard way. Some of the most important things in life come from our darkest moments, she would say. The question isn't whether we'll face darkness. We all will. The question is what we do when it comes. She would look at the essay, at the words she had written about loss and meaning and hope, and she would remember her mother's voice, clear and strong, even after all these years. Stand tall, speak true, love fiercely. Maya Thompson had done all three, and in doing so, she had transformed not just her own life, but countless others. The little girl who had been called stupid had become a voice for the voiceless. The student whose essay had been destroyed had become a destroyer of systems that failed children. The daughter who had lost her mother had become a mother figure to students who had no one else. This was her legacy, not revenge on a bitter, cruel man, but redemption for everyone he had ever hurt. Not destruction, but creation. Not hate, but love. And it was only the beginning. On a spring morning 15 years after that first day at Jefferson High, Maya stood in the rose garden of the White House. The president had just signed the Thompson Education Protection Act, a comprehensive law establishing national standards for student safety and teacher accountability. The law was named for her, though she had fought against the honor, but the families of students who had suffered, the advocates who had pushed for change, the legislators who had championed the cause, they had insisted. This was her legacy, they said. This was what she had built. As cameras flashed and dignitaries applauded, Maya thought about the journey that had brought her here, the pain and the triumph, the darkness and the light. She thought about everyone who had walked this path with her, everyone who had believed when belief seemed impossible. And she thought about a cold February morning, a cruel teacher, and a torn essay. That moment had been meant to destroy her. Instead, it had created her. Maya? She turned to find her father at her elbow, Marcus Thompson, now retired from education, but still advocating, still fighting, still proud. "The president wants a photo," he said. "Are you ready?" Maya looked at the crowd gathered before her, at the building behind her, at the sky stretching endlessly above. She thought about her mother, about all the students who would be protected by this law, about the future stretching out before her. She smiled. "I'm ready." The camera clicked, capturing a moment of triumph born from tragedy. In that image, you could see Maya's strength, her resilience, her unshakable hope. You could see a woman who had been broken and rebuilt herself stronger. And if you looked closely, just at the corner of her smile, you could see something else. A little girl who had been told she was stupid. A little girl who had never believed it. A little girl who had proved them all wrong. That was Maya Thompson's story. Not just a story of one teacher's cruelty, but a story of what happens when someone refuses to let cruelty define them. Not just a story of institutional failure, but a story of what happens when one person decides that failure is not acceptable. It was a story of pain transformed into purpose, of tragedy transformed into triumph, of an essay torn apart, becoming a legacy that would protect children for generations to come. And somewhere, in whatever comes after, a mother watched her daughter and smiled. She had always known. Her little girl was never stupid. She was extraordinary. The end